the security dialogue.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My name is Sadiq Edichun, and you are welcome to the Security Dialogue on Muslim Television Ahmadiyya. Today, we are going to look at a very demanding issue that borders on security. And in my introduction today, we'll give you an account of the Sahih Bukhari, that is one of the books of Islam. And this is Bukhari, volume 7, book 6, 5, number 286, and it states, and this is an account given by Abu Musa al-Sha'ri, who narrated of what the Prophet said when it comes to issues of food security. And it says that the Prophet said, give food to the hungry, pay a visit to the sick, and release, that is, set free the one in captivity by paying his ransom. And within the Islamic regulation, there is a balanced management approach to food management and towards attaining sustainable food security. This approach includes many social, spiritual, resource supply, security, and institutionally related perspective. Today, I have a very wonderful person with me in the studio. He has a very good background when it comes to agricultural economics. He's also an intelligence and security expert. He's in the person of Mr. Moses Jatwat. He's an individual who has an array of experiences, worked with various international organizations, including the Christian Relief programs. He's worked on those programs. He's also worked with some reputable international organizations. And he's here in the studios of MTA for us to look at food security. And we are looking at the impact of conflict on food security. Impact of conflict on food security. Mr. Moses, you are welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we want to zoom straight to having this discussion with you, and it has become very necessary because we look at all around us the issues of conflict, issues of war, even what is currently happening in Ukraine is also having its own dire consequences. But we want to really understand the impact of conflict on food security. And so my very first question will be to say or ask, what actually constitutes food security? What is it about?
Yeah, so basically, food security, when we talk about food security, we are looking at availability of nutritious food, at all times and at affordable prices. So there are some key ingredients of food security. One, or elements. One, we should be talking about availability of the food, its affordability, the quality in terms of nutrition, and the prices at which people can get this food to buy. So 4 key elements: affordability, availability, access, price, and also the quality, how the food is utilized.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So if you take each of these components, how will you be able to, how should we understand its importance when it comes to food security or food insecurity, if I want to say?
Yes, in your intro, you talked about the impact of conflict on food security. Yes, each of these elements or ingredients, can be affected by conflict in so many ways. Let us look at affordability.
Exactly.
Availability.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Okay.
Yes. So once we have conflict, it affects production.
Okay.
For instance, you are going to have displacement of population. People are going to, move from their areas to, safer areas. And so the labor force that is available for production, one, is not, going to be there.
Okay.
And you look at even the labor that is displaced, reintegration of, displaced population is a difficult thing. Farmers would have even lost production tools They would have lost, for instance, seeds that they have preserved for the following year's production. They would have lost farm infrastructure. For instance, he has a farm, a house on a farm where he stores, grains. All these things, would have been gone through conflict. You talk about availability. Food is produced in the rural areas where there is land, for agricultural purposes. It has to be moved to the market centers. In times of conflict, transportation becomes difficult. Government imposes certain restrictions like curfew, or certain areas even get controlled by armed, elements, and it becomes difficult for food to move from the production centers to the marketing centers. And so it may be available in the production areas, food is there, but how is it available? For instance, in Accra, how does food get here if there is conflict and then people cannot go, into the production areas and bring food? So it could be available in the north, but how is it accessible to people, in Accra or areas that the food are needed? And even when this food eventually, itinerant traders or, aggregators, people who go and then buy this food, it may eventually get to Accra, it may eventually get to areas, but at what prices? Because at the end, the risk involved in, So
the price becomes the affordability, how people can afford it.
Exactly.
Okay.
The food may be there. So if you have, for instance, a conflict situation where it becomes difficult for market women to move in and bring food to the areas that they are needed, they will take, the risk is high because they may be involved, in conflict. They will run into a conflict situation or violent situation. They still take the risk and go there. When they come, we don't expect the price, to be affordable. So you will have in a particular geographic location where some part of the population is food secure and some part is not food secure. Food may get to Accra, maybe middle to low income earners cannot because a bag of maize is so high, but you have some section, the wealthy and those, that have higher incomes. They'll be able to afford, this food, but the prices will not favor certain group of people in society.
So how would you because looking at, I think does it become a national security issue, or should we apportion it to the individuals that of course if you are not able to afford a certain food, I mean, to be able to cater for your family or the community, that is your own case. How does this become a national security issue, and then relating this one to crime?
Yeah, so I think issue of national security over the last decades, the conversation around national security, has changed.
Okay.
In time past, national security was viewed as defense of territories, and so you had the military playing very key role in national security. And if you look at spending, government spending on issues of security was mainly to arm the military, providing logistics to, protect the borders. But, what is national security? What does it mean if people cannot afford, basic necessities of life, like food, housing? And that brings, into the equation the issue of human security, which has to do with when you talk about food, you talk about health, access to, quality, water, health, and all that. So food security is a national security issue. I want to relate it to health a bit.
Okay.
You realize Ghana, when COVID-19, came, it exposed our lack of preparedness. For instance, isolation centers were not there. Areas to even, quarantine were not there.
Okay.
Because we're taken unawares.
Okay.
So the same thing, if we have a situation whereby we do not have food, or in a particular year, maybe there is famine, there's drought, and we are not able, how are we going to withstand this shock? I talk about crime. Obviously, once people cannot eat, cannot get food to eat, it leads to so many, especially in the urban areas where it is difficult, like I was saying.
Yeah.
Access to food, the affordability
Okay.
may not be there. People don't have the means to actually, purchase food. And that has a correlation with crime. We know that, some of even the, conflicts within the sub-region, is as a result of food insecurity.
Okay. So now how, let's look at the importance of food security from the micro to the macro level in terms of economic indicators, and how its dire consequences on again the issues of national security?
Yes, for at the micro level, it is very basic. Everybody needs food. Is fuel for human survival. We need food to be able to keep a healthy population that would contribute to production. If we have a nation where we are food insecure, we don't have a healthy population. How then do we even increase production in our various sectors? So we need a healthy population in the first place. At the macro level, you realize the case of Ghana, which is a heavily import dependent country. We have good climate and good soils that supports agricultural production, but we are exporting a lot. You take the case of chicken, where we are exporting. You take the case of rice. I mean, you take onions, tomatoes. That is,
so you mean we are bringing in a lot of these things from? So we are importing them from other countries.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we are talking about the falling rate of the cedi.
Okay.
The cedi is getting weaker against the dollar. The more you export, then the more your currency is strong.
Okay.
But if you are bringing in everything, then definitely your currency is going to be weaker.
Okay.
So it has implication on GDP, and the economic health of the nation. So if we have enough food in the system and we are exporting, that is what is going to strengthen our currency. And so you wouldn't need so much dollars. You don't have to use so much Ghana cedis to be able to
as an import,
import, and that is weakening our economy.
But I mean, you have a background in agriculture, and then there is a lot of sayings that when you look at the lands within Ghana and within even across the sub-region, we have what they term arable lands. So what do you think accounts for the fact that we are not able to, as it is, produce enough for ourselves to be able to be food, to have sufficient food for sustainability, so that some of these turbulent times, like what we are experiencing currently in Ukraine, where grains have become so much a commodity in high demand, and we are not getting it. What accounts for that shortfall within the agriculture sector as far as security is concerned?
So there are a number of factors that is accounting for the poor performance, if we put it that way, of agriculture sector. Because obviously, a country that is importing very basic food staples, something like rice, maize. There was some time we heard maize was even imported from Brazil, because if you look at Ghanaian dishes, it's made of something like rice, something like maize. So if you're at a basic level, we cannot even feed ourselves. That is an issue, and there are a lot of things that is accounting for that. You look at population growth, for instance. We are seeing that currently Ghana is 30 million, and there are projections that in the next 10 years, another 4 million is going to add, so we are moving to around 35 million. So population is already an issue. Are we putting in place enough measures to be able to match the population to food supply? You look at government, policies, as well. So it will be favorable to allow for agricultural production. I am happy that this government introduced the Planting for Food and Jobs program that is supposed to have boosted the agricultural sector. But unfortunately, there are some difficulties. You take the case of fertilizer smuggling. In our neighboring countries, fertilizer is not subsidized. Farmers buy it at the price at which they are produced. But in Ghana, successive government, not only this government, try as much as possible to subsidize fertilizer and farm inputs, so that farmers are able, to get these inputs at low prices, to be able to produce to feed the nation and then to export. But you have unscrupulous people that are engaged in fertilizer smuggling.
Exactly. So I wanted to touch on that, because in one of my research, I realized that even fertilizers are being used for some, as it is, explosives. And I want you to, you are an intelligence and a security person that you've worked on some of these things. How is that conundrum as far as our safety and security is concerned? Because for over the years, we have known that fertilizers are for growing food for us.
Yes.
But this is a situation where you are looking at non-state actors like violent extremists and terrorists now being able to modify fertilizers into explosive, and it's now, instead of the positive side of the thing, is becoming negative. How dangerous is this? As you mentioned, the smuggling aspect of fertilizers, for instance.
Yes, so it is dangerous. And indeed, currently in Ghana, the threat of violent extremism emanating from the Sahel has, heightened the threat perception level. And so issue of smuggling is one of the issues that is creating a lot of vulnerability for Ghana. Around the border areas, you go to Tumu, you go to Golu, these are farming, areas. Mm-hmm. And the Tumu area in the upper west, Tumu, Golu, where is the Funsi area, these are areas that produces a lot of maize. And maize is heavily dependent, on nitrogen fertilizers. So the introduction of the planting for food and jobs, program brought in a lot of fertilizer for farmers. But unfortunately, these fertilizers, end up in Burkina Faso. And like you rightly, linked it to the danger, of this is that you may have this fertilizer, which is a raw material for manufacture of IEDs, improvised explosive devices for jihadist activities. So the border areas, you see, it's an organized crime. Smuggling is an organized crime. You will not see big trucks, load of fertilizer crossing, the border because of police checks and other security vigilance along the borders. But if you take the case of the border situation between Ghana and other countries, you'll find that it's a river that is separating Ghana, and then that is a borderline between Ghana and then Burkina Faso or Togo. In the rainy season, it's better, but in the dry season where the rivers dry up, people are just crossing in and coming out. And even there are some residents at the border areas whose farms are on the other side. So he takes 2-3 bags of fertilizer into a tricycle. He's going to farm, for instance. Later would the security agency suspect that he may, maybe engage in smuggling.
Or be sending it to this violent extremists for whatever they will say.
Exactly. And they may not also present themselves as violent extremists. Some could be business, people who are engaged in, collaborating with some Ghanaian counterparts in the smuggling of this fertilizer. And the danger is that we don't know where these fertilizers are going. And if you look at the spate of attacks, in Burkina Faso and then Togo, which has intensified over the last 3 months, using, explosives.
I have also learned that sometimes these violent extremists also take advantage of the fact that in order for them to be able to advance their cause, they equally want to even provide for communities that, as it is, are in need of some of these basic needs. How should we, as a people, and we are drawing the curtains down on this very listen. So taking preventive measures, because you have made mention of measures that we need to put in place to at least have some buffers, so that in terms of troubles and all, we'll be able to shoulder it. What are the preventive measures from increasing our buffers and also connecting that to reducing, for instance, maybe crime? Because when people are hungry, especially in the urban areas,
yes,
we have seen people go to court and sent to court, and the basic accusation is that they went to steal somebody's food, maybe a bunch of plantain or something, and then the person is prosecuted and all of that. So in the preventive measures that we need to apply in terms of increasing our buffers and also looking at the security issues, especially across our borderline where a lot of this food are supposed to come, so that it doesn't fall in the hands of these extremists for them to take it as an advantage.
Okay, so I would approach it in two ways.
Thank you.
The first thing, it has to do with the border security that we're talking about. Indeed, this year there is no fertilizer for farmers, because of the current situation Ghana finds itself. We are not able to fund fertilizer and other inputs for farmers. And again, I say that the areas close to the borders, how are these areas vulnerable? we have a situation whereby this year there is no fertilizer in these areas. Farmers are not getting fertilizer. So if you have a situation whereby extremists even begin to offer these services, not only food, but also certain basic services, they begin to offer. They may not come as jihadists, they may come as philanthropists, or under some cover, and begin to offer our people these services. The time we realize, they are recruiting our people, and people are joining jihadism. We need to take issues of food security as a serious national security concern. Indeed, in the U.S., the U.S. Department, of Agriculture, is a key component of the national security strategy of the U.S. And I am also happy that now that we have a national security policy, it outlines clearly the role of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, research institutions, to be able to, for instance, come out with researches that will promote the agricultural sector, high yielding varieties, and animal species. Research institutions should be able to conduct research into disease-resistant, varieties, of crops that farmers, and look at the issue of climate change, farmers now are not able to even predict the how, the rains are coming. They plant 3 weeks, no rains, and all those things. Can the research institutions come out with maybe early maturing, varieties, 1.5 months or 2.5 months for maize, and then so as to mitigate against the issue of climate change.
Okay.
Other places, strategically, they even have food buffer for even the next 10 years. You take the chicken we are consuming today, this chicken were not produced today. The areas that, countries that are producing chicken, they make sure they have enough so that if there is, a crisis, they have enough food stock. So as they are producing more to stock, then they release the old ones, particularly into Africa. So the chicken we eat today, in our various restaurants and our homes, are not actually chicken that are produced today.
Wow.
They may have, they have a lot of, buffer, stock. So they replenish, once they are pushing. And if there is a crisis, they are able. Ghana, can we talk about the same thing? Look at even the free SHS program. Secondary schools, the Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary Schools constantly are complaining and threatening to close down schools because they cannot feed, students any longer. So
some of these things will even give rise to demonstrations here and there,
which
will disturb.
It's happening in some secondary schools. Some schools have, some students have rejected certain food. We're talking about quality, for instance,
okay.
Nutrition.
Okay.
Some students, secondary school students,
because it helps them in their growth,
exactly.
their
some
body
students have
system
gone to the boarding
up.
house, in the dining hall, and they found that the porridge that they have prepared is more or less water, and they have rejected food. Some go there, the gari and beans that is prepared for them. They go and see it, and they think that, look, you can even count the number, of beans in it. It's a food security matter, and they are demonstrating, which is, a security concern.
You made mention of how some countries have been able to put together these storage measures. Is this something that we are doing or we are not doing?
We may be doing something, but I think we are not doing enough.
Okay.
You see, let me draw a link between agriculture and industry.
Okay.
Agriculture provides the raw materials for industry. Today we are talking about one district, one factory, initiative of this government. It should move with production. We have a lot of graduates, for instance.
So even this graduate unemployment, yes, could be averted through agriculture.
Exactly, because we have 70% of our population in agriculture. And then we have 70% of our, but unfortunately these are, peasant farmers, 1 acre, 2 acres. If you take the case of US, only 5% of the US population, is farming to feed the US and then even export. Wow. But we have 70%. We have more than 70% of arable, land in Ghana that is suitable for production of basic, produce that we need as a nation to maintain a healthy population. But unfortunately, we are not able to do this. So there's the need for a conscious investment in the agriculture sector. If you set up a factory that depends on, for instance, cashew. and then we are not producing. How do you expect the factory to run? The Commander Sugar Factory is something that has been in the news for a very long time now. Sometimes you hear, oh, they've tested it, some sugar has come. They are talking about raw materials, the sugar cane to feed it is not there. We have a lot of graduates of agricultural engineering, mechanical engineering. Once a factory is running, you need agricultural engineers, for instance, on the field, the tractors and all that maintenance. You need mechanical engineering, in the factory to maintain technicians. You need people, in procurement.
And on the farms as well.
On the farm,
so it will be able to take a chunk of the
exactly.
people out of the street.
Yes.
To avert many of the crimes
exactly.
that we are perpetrating.
Exactly. People go to study chemistry, physics and all that. There will be laboratory
within the farming system so that they will be able to test them.
If a factory is producing fruit juice, they will have a quality assurance, department, and you have chemistry, technicians working there, try to, ensure that the product meets, safety standards. So there's going to be job, for everybody. All the people in the agricultural value chain, right from, the farmers, input dealers, because there is market for it, and so there's also high demand for inputs, transportation, what's in a cold store, owners, up to the food vendors, the food vendors, and all of us.
There's definitely. I mean, the discussion is actually getting more interesting, but I mean, time is not really on our side at this very moment where we want to draw the curtains. But I want to take your final words, and especially looking at the vulnerability issues around. And listen, when it happens, you have women and youth who are more vulnerable. And as you've just mentioned, how we can get the youth off the street through agriculture. I want your final words to the youth and what we should also be able to do in order to move ourselves from these vulnerability stages.
Yeah, of course, issues of conflict, food insecurity affects the youth and women, a lot. In some areas that have been hit by famine, issues of malnutrition. Children at their early stages need, a lot of food because constantly, the cells are being broken down and they have to be replenished, and they need fuel, which is food. Once, an area is food insecure, you find malnutrition, malnourishment, of children. That even affects their psychological well-being, their growth, and it has an impact, on education, as well. They are not able to concentrate the way the brains would have developed if they had quality food, to eat and to be able to develop their potential. That will be affected. Women, it's a fact, that issues of food insecurity, conflicts affect women. We should take issues of food security as a very serious one. And I know that, as I said, the national security strategy, it won't end there by carving a role for the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, but we should have, effort to ensure that we produce enough, not just to feed, but to export.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moses Jatwat, who is an intelligence and security expert, has array of experiences, and one of those is agricultural economics. And within the last few minutes, we have discussed impact of conflict on food security. And in his submission, he has alerted us that when we talk of food security, we are talking about accessibility, we are talking about affordability, availability, and quality of food. Any missing link from these four elements put a country or a community in food insecurity, and that can have a very dire consequences on national security. Because, for instance, if the young ones coming up do not have all these elements, they don't have food to eat to grow well in order for them to contribute to the national development agenda. Sometimes, somehow, we need some of these young men to be in our security agencies and also work in other sectors. And if these people are not well fed, or they are not strong, able-bodied men that we can employ to protect and also join in the national development agenda in terms of the various sectors that we have, then it is actually going to have serious issues on our economy. And so this has been, once again, the security dialogue. As we have always indicated, the program is just toward promoting peace and security, and Islam stands for peace. And here, we are discussing issues in very diverse ways from various fields in order for us to get the context of security. And one of those is what we have just started. If you are watching us, you can follow us on all our social media handles: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can follow us, MTA Africa, MTA Ghana, MTA International. We are all over. You can also send in your questions when you want to follow us there, and there will be a lot of people, very knowledgeable persons here to also answer your questions for you. Till we meet same time, is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.